everyone, and welcome back to Mach 1 Mindset. Today we're diving into Silver Air Patrol Learn to Lead 9.7 Utilitarianism. Now before we get started, please make sure you like, subscribe, and of course comment down below if you have any questions. Additionally, please note that we are in Volume 3, pages 27 through 30, so feel free to follow along. Let's dive into it. Ethics forces us to answer a brutal question. When choices hurt people, how do we decide who pays the price? One answer is utilitarianism. Utilitarianism is an ethical theory developed by Jeremy Bentham and John Stuart Mill. Its core claim is simple but demanding. An action is morally right if it produces the greatest amount of happiness for the greatest number of people. Nothing else ultimately matters. Not tradition, not intention, not duty, only results. Utilitarianism values human reason. Bentham believed moral decisions could be measured almost mathematically. Each action produces pleasure or pain. Add them up. Choose the option with the highest net of happiness. Think of it as moral accounting. If one choice produces more pleasure overall than the other, it is morally better. This is why utilitarianism is named for utility, meaning usefulness. A good action is useful because it produces happiness. Importantly, utilitarians defined happiness in a very specific way. Happiness is enjoyment, satisfaction, and pleasure. It is subjective. It is how people feel, not whether they flourish or become virtuous. This separates utilitarianism from virtue ethics. Virtue ethics ask, what kind of person should I become? Utilitarianism asks, what outcome produces the most happiness? That difference matters. Utilitarianism also demands selflessness. Your happiness does not count more than anyone else's. In fact, your happiness may need to be sacrificed if it increases happiness overall. A famous real-world example helps illustrate this. Lieutenant Michael Murphy, a Navy SEAL, was fighting in Afghanistan when his team came under heavy enemy fire. Trapped by terrain, he left cover to get a signal and call for help. That decision exposed him to direct fire. He was killed, but his actions saved the lives of his teammates. From a utilitarian perspective, this is a moral excellence. One life was lost so many others could live. The total happiness was greater than if Murphy had stayed under cover. His motives did not matter. His courage does not matter. Only the results matter. That is both the power and the coldness of utilitarianism. Murphy's family and fellow service members often argue what made him a hero was not the math. It was his character, his sense of duty, and his willingness to serve something higher than himself. Utilitarianism dismisses all that as moral irrelevant. To a utilitarian, Murphy's death was justified because it worked. Utilitarianism also cares deeply about justice, though not for the reason many people expect. John Stuart Mill argued that justice is necessary because societies are happier when they are just. Justice is not sacred itself, it is useful. If you are injured in a car accident, the responsible driver must compensate you, even if that reduces his happiness. Society enforces this because fairness increases trust, stability, and overall happiness in the long run. This is why courts enforce child support, contracts, and criminal penalties. These rules reduce individual happiness in the short term because it increases collective happiness over time. For utilitarianism, justice is a tool. It is valuable because it works, but this leads to serious problems. First, utilitarianism depends on measuring happiness, and that measurement is unreliable. Who decides whether an ice cream sundae is worth 12 happiness points or 40? How do you compare poetry to new shoes? How would you measure grief, fear, or dignity? Second, utilitarianism struggles when happiness conflicts between individuals. A peeping Tom gains pleasure by watching people who do not know they are being watched. The victims feel no unhappiness because they are unaware. By the numbers, happiness increases, yet almost everyone knows that this behavior is morally disgusting. Utilitarianism has a trouble explaining why. Third, utilitarianism threatens human dignity. If morality is only about totals, then individuals become interchangeable. One innocent person can be sacrificed if enough people benefit. That makes every human being replaceable. Utilitarians accept this openly. If 10 lives can be saved by sacrificing one, they say the sacrifice is not only allowed but required. That conclusion makes many people deeply uncomfortable and for a good reason. Utilitarianism is powerful because it forces leaders to confront consequences. It refuses to hide behind good intentions. But it is dangerous because it can justify cruelty when math seems favorable. That brings us to a broader question of leadership and moral restraint, especially in war. War seems to violate a basic moral rule: do not kill. Yet history is filled with war. To deal with this tension, philosopher Thomas Aquinas developed the just war theory, a framework that sets strict conditions under which war might be morally justified. According to Aquinas, war is only moral only if all conditions are met. First, war must be a last resort. Every serious attempt at diplomacy must fail before violence is allowed. Second, war must be waged by a legitimate authority. Governments may declare war, criminal groups may not. Third, war must pursue a just cause, such as self-defense or responding to a grave injustice. Fourth, war must be fought with right intentions. The goal must be to justice and peace, not revenge, anger, or conquest. Fifth, there must be a reasonable chance of success. Sending people to die for a hopeless cause is not heroism, it is moral failure. Sixth, the goal of war must be to restore peace, not prolong violence. Seventh, force must be proportional. The harm inflicted must not exceed the harm being corrected. Finally, war must make every effort to protect innocent non-combatants. Civilians, hospitals, and schools are not legitimate targets. These principles explain why attacks like 9/11 are morally indefensible. They were unprovoked, targeted civilians, lacked legitimate authority, and guaranteed more war, not peace. Just war theory exists to restrain violence, not to glorify it. No ethical theory is perfect. Utilitarianism asks hard questions about consequences. Virtue ethics demands character. Duty ethics demands consistency. Just war theory demands restraint. An ethical leader does not memorize theories and stop there. An ethical leader takes moral questions seriously, thinks deeply, and applies principles consistently, even when it is very uncomfortable. There is always a philosophy for lack of courage. Ethical leadership begins when you refuse to hide behind excuses and choose to think.